What if I told you guys I was able to find a flight over to Europe from the United States for just $300? Hi, I'm Trevor from Quest with Trev and Lex, and today we are going to be discussing ways to travel for a much less cheaper price. Now my first tip, and this one I've covered in previous videos before, which I will leave here in the description, but this one is about traveling in non-peak times. Now, what do I mean by non-peak times? Now, this is going to be anywhere between May and August, okay? Those months are going to be highly saturated with tons and tons of tourists, pretty much wherever you go. What I would recommend then, much like we do quite often when we travel, is try to look for just off the shoulders of those, which for us has lately been September, October, as well as March and April, as your best times to find a really, really cheap flight and cheaper hotels and just an overall budget trip for you. Now, one of the nice things about that is then you also get to save yourself a little bit of time. Because there's less people there, you won't have to wait in line as much. You won't have to worry about budging around a bunch of people as you walk around these certain areas that you end up going to. The one sometimes bad part is the weather will be a little bit worse than it is in the summer, but ultimately you're going there for an experience and you're going to get a great experience no matter what. Tip number 2 is going to be related to your accommodations. Now, it can be really nice and fancy to go get that really nice hotel, but ultimately that's going to cost you $200-300 a night, and simply that's not worth it where you can spend that money elsewhere, like doing other cool excursions or visiting different attractions, spending it on the great food that you get to have while you're on vacation. You might find some sweet deals like around the city centers, but ultimately you might have to venture out just a little bit outside of the city center where it still allows you to take some transportation in. And another really great idea is the hostels that you'll see, and this is obviously very specific to areas like Europe, but they are actually a lot safer than what people may imagine. I've stayed at multiple myself, and I've never felt like I was in danger or anything like that, and you can find them for really, really cheap prices, sometimes for 30 to 40 bucks a night, and you're gonna get a great experience. Now, one of my greatest opinions when it comes to hotels and hostels and Airbnbs is you're on vacation. How often are you going to be actually at your hotel? The answer should be not very often, because you're going out and you're exploring and you're having a good time. Now, let's say you find one you really like and for a price that's in your price point area, then I would recommend then booking it, but also buying the free cancellation part along with that. So now let's say after you book it and you have the free cancellation and all of a sudden the price drops by 15-20 bucks, then you can cancel it and then rebook at that price that you like now. Again, that can be different for everyone. Ultimately, when it comes to either buying a flight or getting an accommodation, buy at the price that you desire, okay? There can be so easy to get caught up in, oh, it's gonna go cheaper, it's gonna go cheaper, and then all of a sudden it just starts to skyrocket. So if you find that price that you like, please just buy the ticket or buy the hotel, all that good stuff. Now, tip number 3 is related to cash. It is a great idea to carry some along with you if you're going to a foreign country. So I'd recommend trying to get at least a little bit before you go. So that could be going to your bank and getting a few bills of the place you are going. Now, let's say you don't have time to do that, or you realize you're in kind of a pinch and you end up at this place that you're going to. I would say please don't get any at the airport, because you're going to get upcharged like crazy. Wait till you get to the location you're heading to or near like your hotel. Go to the bank, to the ATM, and get some cash from there, okay? Now, if it asks you for a conversion rate, don't take it, okay? It's gonna say, hey, you're taking out 150 euros. Why don't we say it's $190? And then all of a sudden you're spending way more money than what you should have been, because the exchange rate is not correct. Because with the actual exchange rate, it should be probably about another $20 less. Now, along the lines of booking flights or booking hotels, please make sure to check multiple sites, because you could find that on Skyscanner, this certain flight is $400, let's say. But then you go and you check Google Flights and they have postings for $350. Now, let's say you look a little bit deeper into all these listings of these flights and you see one of them is through Finnair. Then you say, oh, let me go hop on Finnair's website, because I will get the miles through their airline, and then you can always use those miles to then stack up, and then ultimately you can maybe even get a free flight in the future. It's always safer to book through those airlines, not through the secondary sites. Now, don't get me wrong, the secondary sites are nice and you can find some really good ones, but anytime you can book through an airline and for a cheaper price, absolutely all day, make sure you do that. Now, of course, just be wary. Sometimes when you find those cheaper flights, it doesn't always end up being cheaper in the long run, okay? So let's say I find a flight for $300, but I don't look into the fine print of what that $300 flight means, and all of a sudden they're gonna start upcharging you for your bags. Please make sure to read thoroughly, because if you end up not having those checked bags or not having that carry-on, you have to spend another $100. Well, then it's just like if I bought a $500 ticket from this other website. Also, check the schedule on those flights as well, okay? Although it may be cheaper, it could be 3 connecting flights. Now, if you're okay with that, then go ahead and you book it. But if you're kind of on that pinch time schedule and you really want to make sure you're enjoying the time you get to spend in that new place that you're going to, it might be better off to find the direct flight because it will be cheaper for you in the long run and much less of a hassle. Now, moving on to my next tip, it is going to be don't use taxis, okay? Because a lot of these places that you might go to might have great transportation services. So for instance, they might have a really great bus system that you can hop on for really cheap, and then it'll take you to wherever the city center is, or it can take you to wherever your hotel is or to the next attraction that you're going to go to. But also, especially let's say you're going to Europe, they usually have really great tram or underground systems that you can use. For instance, if I go to Rome, and you can get a Roma pass for cheap. You can just simply walk if you're okay with it. Now, I get not everyone can do that, and so with those public transportation systems, they're gonna come in very handy for you. And you can buy a pass for 3 days for a really cheap price. Just stay away from anything like a personal transportation service, such as a taxi, because you're gonna pay a premium for it, whereas you could have paid for even like quarter the price to do a public transportation system. Now, taking the public transportation step even farther, let's say you want to jump from city to city. I often did this when I was in the UK, when I was studying abroad there. And a lot of times we would use just the train systems, which really worked out incredibly well because they come every so often, like every 10 to 15 minutes, and they can take you to the next town, and they can also then connect you. So a lot of times what I would do, like let's say I wanted to go to Southern Wales for the weekend, then all I had to do was hop on a train and I could take it down there for a really good price. Now, say you're in France, you're in Paris, and your next stop, you're like, hey, I really want to go to Barcelona for the next few days. Now, you can find really cheap flights on budget airlines such as Ryanair, usually for like $70-80. But let's say that that's $80 flight or $100 flight or whatever is still too expensive for you, then feel free to hop on a bus. Now, the one caveat to that situation is it is going to take a lot more time, but it is going to save you quite a bit of money at the same time. Or similar to that, you could hop on a train, one of the fast trains that can take you from country to country, and that's another way to travel a lot cheaper compared to buying a flight. And yet another tip in regards to transportation is book all of your trains, buses, anything like that far in advance, okay? Because a lot of times they're going to be a lot cheaper that way. To give you an example, if I wanted to take the train when I was in Wales to Manchester for the weekend, and I booked it the day of, it was going to be a heck of a lot more expensive than if I knew what I was doing in advance and I booked it a few weeks in advance. Now, on the same basis of luggage, learn how to travel in a very light way. This is something that Lexi and I have been doing a lot more of lately, is how can we fit everything into just a carry-on, or a carry-on and a personal bag. And it has made life so much easier in so many ways. We all just overpack anyways as humans, and so if I can find a way to get it into a really good like 35-liter bag for my carry-on, and one that can be condensed down with all my things, and learn how to travel light with just a couple pairs of pants, a few shirts, underwear, and all that good stuff, is going to make your life easier monetarily, but also when you get to those locations, wherever it may be, you don't have to worry about lugging around just a bunch of stuff with you. It can just be on your back. My next tip is kind of a long way around sort of tip, but if you're ever interested and you feel like you can stay on top of one, get a credit card that offers airline points, okay? Now this isn't the most ideal situation, usually means you gotta spend money up front, but as that builds over time and you're getting all those travel points, all of a sudden you can build up to an aspect where you can fly for free or for insanely cheap. And every so often you can use those miles and dollars that you've spent to buy hotels as well for free or book hotels for free. So it's a long game that you would play with that. But ultimately, as those points can rack up, you can end up flying for a lot cheaper or staying in a really cool location for a lot cheaper as well. Now on to the next tip, and this is kind of, I don't know, take it as it is, but I ultimately love to travel with other people as well. So for an example, this upcoming trip, Lexi and I are going to be traveling with my sister-in-law and then possibly another friend as well. And so if we have all four of us and we can find a hotel or an Airbnb for really cheap and then split it among us, that's going to make my life a heck of a lot easier, that's for sure. Another really cool thing to travel a little bit cheaper is a lot of these sites and attractions, some of them might not cost any money. So for instance, like I would highly recommend going into the Colosseum or into the Roman Forum. But you can certainly just admire them from up close or from afar without actually going into them. Again, I wouldn't recommend that. However, it is something that's certainly an option if you need to save some money here and there. Another really good tip is regarding the food and drink. Regarding water, I would always recommend bringing a water bottle with you because you can find different places to fill up. Now when it comes to food, I obviously will highly recommend to try the local cuisine as much as you possibly can. But if you're looking to save money here or there, like around lunchtime, go to the grocery store, grab some meat and cheese and some bread, and you can have a lunch meal for very, very, very cheap. Another really cool option is you could go to some of these local bakeries, let's say for breakfast, and you can find something for incredibly cheap. For like, to give you an example, there is a store in the UK called The Pound Bakery, and you can find a really cheap pastry or a bakery item for just £1, which is absolutely amazing. And another really cool thing to just going and grabbing like light snacks or breaded cheese and meat at those grocery stores is you can just take them with you and go and sit out in the park and enjoy the views that you get to have in front of you. I know that's something I did a lot with my friends when I was studying overseas, and it was honestly a really, really fun experience. Now the next cheap thing is related to certain populations. Now if you're a senior or if you're a student, you can often find really cool deals at different museums or different sites and attractions. So just look into those. Like let's say you want to go to the Louvre, you can find cheaper prices, but we got them for free for simply being students. Now that's all the tips I had planned for you guys today. If there's anything I didn't mention in the video today, just feel free to drop a comment below of things that you found helpful or things that you know that kind of cheapened your vacation while you were on it. Also, while you're at it, please just subscribe to our channel here. We're going to try to be posting videos every week regarding travel activities, tips, all that good stuff, and even some vlogs. After you subscribe, drop a comment there below as well that's saying that you subscribe, and I'll reach out to you if I can. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.